What happens when a prince walks onto a live television set thinking he owns the place, only to discover that respect is earned, not inherited? It only took 38 seconds for everything to explode. But before we get into this absolutely wild confrontation, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because we are pulling back the curtain on royalty's dark side. We are exposing entitled celebrities and their shocking behavior the cameras never showed you. We have got the raw footage they don't want you to see, and you won't want to miss a single reveal. Drop a comment below and let us know what you think about this outrageous behavior. Now let's get into it. The studio lights were blazing hot that afternoon. Piers Morgan sat behind his desk, straightened his tie, and welcomed his guest with a warm smile and an extended hand. Prince Harry strolled onto the set wearing designer jeans and a casual button-up shirt, looking around the studio like he was inspecting property he already owned. He did not shake Piers' hand. He just sat down, slouched back in the chair, and tossed his phone onto the desk between them. Piers kept his composure. He had interviewed presidents, prime ministers, and some of the biggest names in entertainment. He knew how to handle difficult guests. He smiled and said, "Welcome to the show, Harry. Thanks for joining us today." Harry glanced at him with a look that could freeze water. "Let's just get this over with," he muttered. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was not the charming prince they had seen in carefully edited royal documentaries. This was someone else entirely. Piers remained professional. "Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you have a lot going on. Let's start with something simple. You have been in the public eye your entire life. How do you handle the pressure?" Harry scoffed. Actually scoffed. Out loud. On live television. "Pressure? You want to talk to me about pressure? You sit here in your comfortable little studio, reading off a teleprompter, asking softball questions to celebrities who pretend to care what you think. That is not pressure. You have no idea what real pressure is." The audience gasped. Piers' smile tightened just slightly, but he kept his cool. "I think many people would disagree with that, but I respect your perspective. Let me ask you something else. You have spoken about wanting privacy for your family, yet you have done multiple interviews, a documentary series, a book. Some people find that contradictory. What would you say to them?" Harry leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "What I would say is that people like you have made billions off my family's pain. You have chased us, harassed us, lied about us, and then you have the nerve to question why we want to set the record straight? The hypocrisy is unbelievable." Piers raised his eyebrows. "I have never chased you or your family anywhere. I am a journalist. I report the news. If you put yourself in the public sphere, you cannot be surprised when people have questions." "Questions?" Harry's voice rose sharply. "You call what you do questions? You twist everything. You take things out of context. You make up stories to sell papers and get views. You are a parasite." The studio went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Piers sat perfectly still, his hands folded calmly on the desk. "That is quite an accusation. Do you have any evidence to support that claim?" Harry laughed bitterly. "Evidence? I do not need evidence. Everyone knows what you people do. You are all the same. You pretend to care about the truth, but really you just want clicks and ratings." Piers leaned back in his chair. His voice remained steady and calm. "Harry, I have been doing this job for over 30 years. I have won awards for my journalism. I have exposed corruption, held powerful people accountable, and given a voice to those who could not speak for themselves. I take my responsibility very seriously. If you have a specific grievance with something I have reported, I am happy to discuss it. But making blanket accusations without proof is not helpful to anyone." Harry stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You want proof? How about the fact that you people drove my mother to her death? How about that for proof?" The audience audibly gasped. Some people put their hands over their mouths. This had just taken a very dark turn. Piers remained seated, his expression serious but controlled. "Harry, what happened to your mother was a tragedy, an absolute tragedy. But I was not there that night. I did not chase her car. I have always condemned the paparazzi behavior that contributed to that accident. Blaming me for something I had nothing to do with is unfair, and frankly, it is beneath you." "Beneath me?" Harry's face flushed red. "You do not get to tell me what is beneath me. You sit there in your fancy suit, acting all high and mighty, but you are just as responsible as the rest of them. You all have blood on your hands." Piers stood up now, slowly, deliberately. His voice remained calm but firm. "I understand you are angry. I understand you have pain. But you do not get to come onto my show and make false accusations against me. You want to talk about your experiences? Fine. You want to share your truth? I will give you a platform, but you do not get to attack my integrity without consequences. Harry pointed his finger at Piers. Your integrity? That is a joke. You have no integrity. You are a puppet. You say whatever your bosses tell you to say. You attack whoever they tell you to attack. That is absolutely untrue, Piers said firmly. I have been fired from jobs for refusing to apologize for stories I believed in. I have walked away from opportunities because I would not compromise my principles. You do not know me, Harry. You have created some fantasy version of me in your head based on your own bitterness and resentment. Harry stepped closer to the desk. Bitterness? You think I am bitter? I have given up everything for my family's well-being. I have walked away from privilege and wealth and comfort because I actually have principles. What have you ever sacrificed? Piers met his gaze directly. I have sacrificed time with my own family to do this job. I have received death threats for stories I have covered. I have been sued, attacked, and vilified for pursuing the truth. And I have never once asked for sympathy or played the victim. I just kept doing my job. Your job? Harry practically spat the words. Your job is to destroy people. Your job is to tear down anyone who does not fit into your narrow little worldview. You are a bully with a microphone. The audience was completely transfixed. This was unlike anything they had ever seen before. Piers took a deep breath and spoke slowly, carefully. Harry, I invited you here for a conversation, a respectful exchange of ideas. Instead, you have hurled insults, made false accusations, and behaved in a way that I frankly find shocking. If you cannot have a civil discussion, then perhaps this interview should end. Harry grabbed his phone off the desk. Oh, it is ending all right. I am not going to sit here and be lectured by someone like you. You are everything that is wrong with the media. You are a dinosaur clinging to relevance by attacking people who actually matter. Piers folded his arms. If I am so irrelevant, why did you agree to come on my show? Harry froze. For just a moment, he seemed caught off guard. Then his face twisted into a sneer. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, you had changed. I thought maybe you had evolved, but you are the same small-minded, vindictive person you have always been. I have asked you reasonable questions, Piers said evenly. You are the one who came in here with an agenda. You wanted a fight, not a conversation. And now that you are not getting the softball treatment you expected, you are throwing a tantrum. A tantrum? Harry's voice hit a pitch that made several audience members wince. You think this is a tantrum? This is me finally standing up to people like you. This is me refusing to be bullied anymore. Piers shook his head slowly. Harry, nobody here is bullying you. You are a grown man who agreed to do an interview. If you cannot handle basic questions without losing your temper, that is on you, not me. Harry slammed his hand on the desk. The loud bang echoed through the studio. You do not get it. You will never get it. You are part of the machine that destroyed my life. Your life looks pretty good from where I am standing, Piers observed quietly. You have wealth, freedom, a family. Millions of people would trade places with you in a heartbeat. Maybe instead of blaming everyone else for your problems, you should take some responsibility for your own choices. That did it. Harry's face went from red to purple. Responsibility? You want to talk to me about responsibility? I have spent my entire life living up to other people's expectations. I have done my duty. I have served my country. I have tried to make a difference. And what have I gotten in return? Nothing but criticism and judgment from people like you who have never walked a day in my shoes. Piers remained impressively calm. You are right. I have not lived your life. But that does not mean your life gives you the right to treat people poorly. You came here as my guest. I welcomed you with respect. And you have done nothing but insult me and my profession from the moment you sat down. Harry pointed at the cameras. This whole thing is a setup. You brought me here to humiliate me, to make me look bad. Well, guess what? It is not going to work. People see through you. The only person making you look bad is you, Piers said simply. I have given you every opportunity to share your perspective. You are the one choosing to act this way. Harry grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. I am done. I am not staying here to be disrespected. Disrespected? Piers raised his voice slightly for the first time. You have called me a parasite, a puppet, a bully, and blamed me for your mother's death. And you think you are the one being disrespected? The lack of self-awareness is absolutely staggering. Harry turned to walk off the set. Piers called after him. If you leave now, you are proving every critic right. You are showing everyone that you cannot handle even the slightest pushback. Is that really the message you want to send? Harry spun around. The message I want to send is that I will not be treated like this anymore. Not by you, not by anyone. Then stop acting like a child and have an adult conversation, Piers said firmly. Sit down. Let's talk. Really talk. Not this performance you are putting on. Performance? Harry laughed harshly. You think this is a performance? This is real. This is me being honest for once in my life. And you cannot handle it because you are used to people kissing your feet and telling you how brilliant you are. Piers sat back down at his desk. Harry, I have interviewed terrorists, dictators, and serial killers. I think I can handle a frustrated prince, but what I cannot handle is dishonesty. You came here with a chip on your shoulder, looking for a fight, and now you are upset because I did not just roll over and let you walk all over me. Harry stood there, breathing heavily, his fists clenched at his sides. You think you are so smart. You think you have got it all figured out. But you do not know anything about me. You do not know what I have been through. Then tell me, Piers said, his voice softening just slightly. That is what I've been trying to get you to do. Tell your story. Help people understand. But you cannot do that by attacking everyone who asks you a question. Harry shook his head. It is not that simple. You would not understand. Try me, Piers offered. I am listening. There was a long pause. The entire studio held its breath. For a moment, it seemed like Harry might actually sit back down. Like maybe there could be a real conversation, but then his expression hardened again. No, he said flatly. I am not going to give you the satisfaction. You will just twist my words and use them against me. That is what you people do. Piers sighed. Harry, at some point you have to decide whether you want to be heard or whether you just want to be angry. Right now, you are choosing anger, and that is your right. But do not pretend it is anyone's fault but your own. Harry's jaw tightened. I am leaving, and I am going to make sure everyone knows how I was treated here today. Please do, Piers said calmly. Tell them exactly what happened. Tell them how I welcomed you, asked you fair questions, and you responded with insults and accusations. I am sure that will reflect very well on you. Harry started walking toward the exit. A producer rushed over, trying to talk to him, but he brushed past without a word. Piers watched him go, then turned to the camera. Well, that was unexpected, he said to the viewers. I genuinely wanted to have a meaningful conversation. I wanted to understand his perspective. But as you all just witnessed, that became impossible. Harry stopped at the studio door and turned around one last time. You know what your problem is, Piers? You think being tough makes you important. You think challenging people makes you a journalist. But really, you are just mean. And history will not remember you kindly. Piers stood up from his desk and walked around to the front. And you know what your problem is, Harry? You think being born into privilege makes you special. You think your pain matters more than everyone else's. But suffering does not give you the right to treat people badly. And running away every time someone disagrees with you is not brave. It is cowardly. The word hung in the air like a grenade. Harry's face went white, then red, then white again. What did you just call me? I called your behavior cowardly, Piers said, not backing down an inch. And I stand by it. A brave person would sit down and have this conversation, even when it is uncomfortable. A brave person would answer tough questions instead of lashing out. You want to be seen as courageous? Then act like it. Harry took 3 steps back toward the desk. His hands were shaking. You have no right to question my courage. I have served in combat. I have put my life on the line for my country. What have you ever done that was brave? I am doing it right now, Piers said quietly. I am standing here telling you the truth that nobody else will tell you. That takes courage. Because I know the moment this interview ends, you are going to run to your friends and your publicists and paint me as the villain. You are going to play the victim, just like you always do. And people will believe you because you are a prince and I am just a journalist. But that does not make it true. Harry's voice dropped to almost a whisper, but it was somehow more menacing than when he had been shouting. You are going to regret this. Piers did not flinch. Is that a threat? It is a promise, Harry said coldly. Then I guess we both have promises to keep, Piers responded. Mine is to continue doing honest journalism, regardless of who it upsets. What is yours? Harry did not answer. He just stared at Piers with pure hatred in his eyes. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the studio. The door slammed behind him with a deafening bang. Piers stood there for a moment, then slowly walked back to his desk. He sat down, straightened his papers, and looked directly into the camera. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for what you just witnessed. That was not the interview I planned or wanted. I invited Prince Harry here in good faith, hoping for an honest and open discussion. Instead, what you saw was someone who cannot handle even the most basic scrutiny. Someone who would rather throw insults than engage in dialogue." He paused, taking a sip of water from the glass on his desk. "I have been accused of many things over the years. I have been called rude, aggressive, controversial. And sometimes those criticisms are fair. I am not perfect. I make mistakes. But I have never, and will never, apologize for asking difficult questions. That is my job. That is what journalism is supposed to be." The audience sat in stunned silence, still processing what they had just witnessed. Prince Harry wants privacy, but he also wants a platform. He wants sympathy, but he also wants to attack anyone who disagrees with him. He wants to be seen as a victim, but he also wants to be seen as brave. You cannot have it both ways. At some point, you have to choose. Piers leaned forward, his voice becoming more passionate. "I understand that he has been through trauma. I understand that growing up in the public eye is difficult. I understand that losing his mother at a young age left scars. I have tremendous sympathy for all of that. But sympathy does not mean we should excuse bad behavior. It does not mean we should let him say whatever he wants without challenge. That is not compassion, that is enabling." He took another pause, collecting his thoughts. "What you saw today was entitlement, pure entitlement. A man who believes that his title, his status, his pain gives him the right to treat others poorly. And when someone finally stands up to him, when someone finally says no, you cannot talk to me that way, he cannot handle it. He melts down, he runs away, and then he blames everyone else." The camera zoomed in closer on Piers' face. "I hope Harry finds peace. I genuinely do. But he is not going to find it by attacking journalists. He is not going to find it by playing the victim. He is not going to find it by surrounding himself with people who tell him everything he wants to hear. Real peace comes from self-reflection, from taking responsibility, from being honest, not just with the world, but with yourself." Piers shuffled his papers, signaling the end of his monologue. "We had planned a full-hour interview. Obviously, that did not happen. So we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will have a panel discussion about what you just witnessed. Do not go anywhere." As the show cut to commercial, the audience erupted in conversation. People were shocked, confused, excited. They had just witnessed something that would be talked about for days, weeks, maybe even years. Backstage, producers were running around frantically. Phones were ringing off the hook. Social media was exploding. This was already becoming one of the most viral moments in talk show history. Meanwhile, Harry was in his car, speeding away from the studio. His phone was blowing up with calls and texts, but he ignored them all. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, his knuckles turned white. He was furious. How dare Piers talk to him that way? How dare he question his courage, his motives, his integrity? But underneath the anger, there was something else. Something Harry did not want to acknowledge. A tiny voice in the back of his head asking uncomfortable questions. Did he overreact? Did he come in too hot? Was Piers actually right about some things? He shook his head, pushing those thoughts away. No, Piers was wrong. Piers was everything wrong with the media. This was not Harry's fault. This was never Harry's fault. Back in the studio, the show had returned from commercial. Piers sat at his desk with 3 panelists, a media analyst, a psychologist, and a royal correspondent. "So," Piers began, "I think it is safe to say that did not go as planned. Let me start with you, Amanda. As someone who covers the royal family, have you ever seen anything like that?" Amanda, the royal correspondent, shook her head in disbelief. "Never. I have covered the royals for 20 years, and I have never seen a member of the family behave that way in public. It was shocking." "James," Piers turned to the psychologist, "from a psychological perspective, what do you make of what we just witnessed?" James leaned forward thoughtfully. "What I saw was someone who is deeply hurt and angry, but who has not learned how to process those emotions in a healthy way. He is lashing out at anyone he perceives as a threat. It is actually quite sad." "And Sarah," Piers addressed the media analyst, "how do you think this is going to play out in the press?" Sarah smiled wryly. "Oh, this is going to be everywhere. Every newspaper, every website, every social media platform. This is the definition of viral. And honestly, Piers, I think you handled it incredibly well. You stayed calm, you stayed professional, and you did not take the bait." Piers nodded. "I appreciate that. But I have to say, I take no pleasure in what happened. I genuinely wanted to have a constructive conversation, but that is not what he wanted," Amanda interjected. "He came in looking for a fight. You could see it from the moment he walked in. The body language, the attitude. He wanted to make you the villain. The question is why," James added. "Why would he sabotage an opportunity to share his story? My theory is that he is more comfortable being angry than being vulnerable. Anger is easier. Anger gives you power. Vulnerability requires courage." The panel discussion continued for another 20 minutes, dissecting every moment of the confrontation. Viewers at home were glued to their screens. The show's ratings were through the roof. In living rooms across the country, people were taking sides. Some thought Piers had been too harsh. Others thought he had been exactly right. But everyone agreed on one thing. They had never seen anything quite like what had just happened. Social media was a war zone. Harry's supporters were calling Piers every name in the book. Piers supporters were saying Harry had embarrassed himself and his family. The debate raged on, getting more heated by the minute. Celebrity commentators weighed in. Politicians weighed in. Even other members of the media weighed in, with most journalists surprisingly supportive of Piers' approach. As the show wrapped up, Piers gave his final thoughts. "I know many of you are going to have strong opinions about what happened here today. And that is fine. That is what makes this job interesting. But I want to leave you with this thought. We live in a time when people, especially famous people, are rarely challenged. They live in bubbles, surrounded by yes men and yes women who never push back. And I think that is dangerous. I think that leads to exactly what you saw today. People who cannot handle even mild disagreement without falling apart." He looked directly into the camera with those piercing eyes. "My job is not to make my guests comfortable. My job is not to make them feel good about themselves. My job is to ask questions that need to be asked. And if that makes me unpopular, so be it. I would rather be respected than liked. I would rather be honest than popular. And I will never apologize for that." The show ended with a montage of the most dramatic moments from the interview. Harry's angry outbursts, his finger pointing, his final exit, and through it all, Piers remained calm, composed, unshakable. The credits rolled, but the story was far from over. This was just the beginning. In the hours and days that followed, the fallout would be massive. But in that moment, as the studio lights dimmed and the crew began packing up, one thing was crystal clear. Piers Morgan had just won the battle, and he had done it by simply refusing to back down. The audience filed out slowly, still buzzing with excitement. They had come expecting a typical celebrity interview. Instead, they had witnessed something raw, real, and completely unforgettable. They had seen a prince lose his composure and a journalist keep his. They had seen entitlement meet accountability. And they had seen which one blinked first. As Piers gathered his notes and prepared to leave the studio, a young production assistant approached him nervously. "That was incredible, Piers," she said quietly. "I have never seen anything like it." Piers smiled kindly at her. "Neither have I, and I hope I never do again. That was exhausting." "But you never lost your cool," she observed. "How did you stay so calm?" Piers thought for a moment. "Because getting angry would have proven him right. He wanted me to lose my temper. He wanted to make me look like the bully. So I did the opposite. I stayed professional. Sometimes the best response to chaos is simply to remain steady." The young woman nodded, absorbing the wisdom. "Do you think he will ever come back?" Piers laughed. "Not a chance. But that is okay. Some conversations are not meant to be finished. Some people are not ready to hear what they need to hear, and you cannot force growth on someone who is not willing to do the work." He picked up his briefcase and headed for the door. As he walked through the empty studio, past the cameras and lights and equipment, he thought about everything that had just happened. It had been messy and uncomfortable and nothing like he had planned. But it had also been honest. And in a world full of carefully scripted interactions and public relations spin, honesty was becoming increasingly rare. Outside the studio, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Piers climbed into his car and sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, just breathing. It had been a day he would never forget. A day that would define his career in ways he could not yet fully comprehend. He started the engine and drove home, leaving behind the chaos and the cameras and the controversy. Tomorrow, the world would still be talking about what happened. Tomorrow, the think pieces and the hot takes and the social media wars would continue. But tonight, he would go home to his family, have a quiet dinner, and remind himself why he does what he does. Because somebody has to ask the difficult questions. Somebody has to hold people accountable, regardless of their title or status. Somebody has to stand firm when everyone else is bending, and tonight, for better or worse, that somebody had been him. The interview that was supposed to last an hour had lasted barely 20 minutes, but those 20 minutes would echo far longer than any scripted conversation ever could. They would spark debates about celebrity, privilege, media responsibility, and accountability. They would be analyzed and discussed and argued over for months to come, and through it all, one truth remained undeniable. When entitlement met integrity, integrity won. Not because it was louder or angrier or more dramatic, but because it was steady, because it was consistent, because it refused to be moved. That was the real story. Not the shouting or the accusations or the dramatic exit. The real story was about what happens when someone finally says no, when someone finally draws a line and refuses to let it be crossed. When someone chooses principles over popularity and truth over convenience. Piers Morgan had done his job. He had asked the questions that needed asking. He had challenged the narrative that needed challenging, and he had done it all without losing himself in the process. As for Prince Harry, only time would tell if he would learn from this experience or simply use it as further evidence of his victimhood. Only time would tell if he would reflect on his behavior or just blame everyone else. Only time would tell if he would grow or remain stuck in his anger. But that was not Piers' concern. He had done what he could do. The rest was up to Harry. The interview was over. The cameras were off. The audience had gone home. But the conversation it started was just beginning. And that, perhaps, was exactly as it should be.